Good morning. My name is Dr. Richard Colgan. I'm an associate professor at the University of Maryland School of Medicine in Baltimore, where I'm also director of undergraduate education for the Department of Family and Community Medicine. We're going to hear some poetry of life stories from medical students and residents from throughout the United States. The idea for this talk came from a quote from Sir William Osler. The quote is, "Nothing will sustain you more potently than the power to recognize in your humdrum routine, or so it may seem, the true poetry of life. The poetry of the commonplace, of the ordinary man, of the plain toil-worn woman, with their loves and their joys, their sorrows and their griefs." I've wanted to share some of the art of medicine with residents and students, and I have just written a book entitled Advice to the Young Physician on the Art of Medicine, in which is a chapter entitled The Poetry of Life. And I invite you now to hear some poems that some students and residents have encountered in patients they've met through the years. Our first presenter is Jennifer Chu. She's from the UMDNJ, Robert Wood Johnson's Medical School.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Chu, and I'm from Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in Camden, New Jersey. Today I'm going to talk about my poetry of life, and it's called The City Told Me. When you think about it, did we not come to explore the wreck? I mean, the answers in medicine aren't so easily found in our texts. Rather, in the words of Adrian Rich, the words are maps, the words are purposes. And in some way or form, we came to see the damage that was done and the treasures that prevail. We have hope in human bodies. We're so amazed at how they can become easily repaired and how they heal themselves. In another sense, we have hope in the city. The quest to move beyond myths, the quest to find the truth. And for me, that city is Camden, New Jersey, which is an 8.9-mile stretch from one end to the next. My friends and I drove downtown, past the drug districts, past rows and rows of barbed wire fences, and black railings, iron railings across all front porches. There were no toys, no colored chalkings on the sidewalks, no dogs or even cats in the alleyways. Just imagine that. I remember what it was like to start my first rotation. So many faces, so many stories and histories. I had gone through about 40 physicals into my family medicine rotation when I was asked to do a physical for DIFUS. I wasn't really sure what to expect, so I walked on in, and there was this most beautiful 3-year-old girl I'd ever seen. She was sitting there in a pink dress with ruffles, and we asked her, "Are you hurting anywhere?" And she looked at us, and she pointed to her eyes, and she rubbed her eyes. It turned out that her mother was a heroin addict, and her father was in prison. And the paper said that their house was not in livable condition, and that when they found her, she was sitting in a pile of rotting food for 3 days. I remember what it was like to be on my OB rotation, encountering patients in triage. One day, one of them came to me in handcuffs, and there were 2 officers escorting her, one that sat beside her bed and one that plopped himself right outside the door. She had come in complaining of a gush of water that came down her legs that morning and cramping. So I leaned close and put the fetal heart monitor on her, and the officers leaned even closer to watch our interaction. And later that night, it turned out to be the first baby for the both of us. I remember what it was like to go down to the emergency department to get an EKG read during my 24-hour call. It was Labor Day weekend, and our emergency department had admitted 6 gunshot wounds and 1 stab wound at 4 a.m. I was just a passerby, but I can never forget the scene that I saw. I was walking by triage, and one of the patients said to me, "Am I going to die?" I don't know what to tell him. I looked past my left shoulder, and back there in the corner, there were two people, and their heads were down, and it looked like they were praying. And then there was this long stretch of silence, something that my friend would call an air fermata. These moments of silence, that's when an angel's passing over, is what she used to tell me. Afterwards, I climbed up to the 7th floor, went to the on-call room, tried to get in a few minutes, but I kept on hearing the helicopter overhead. And it seemed as night had become day once more. And I kept on imagining that they were airlifting patients in from faraway places and bringing gifts of hearts on ice and corneas in milk, gifts of restoration. I remember what it was like also to be a patient in a sense. As part of our medical training, we work at a free clinic, a student-run free clinic, and we are in charge of making their appointments, going with them to any of the referrals that we make for them, doing their follow-ups, doing their initial visits, doing their lab work. And so in that aspect, we're involved in every aspect of their medical care. I was one of the student doctors for a large Hispanic family. I remember sitting in the waiting room with 3 of the children and the grandmother, and they didn't speak English, and I only knew a few words of Spanish. I was like, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Duele? And we were sitting there in the financial office waiting to apply for charity care, and it turned out that they didn't qualify for charity care, and they would need more documents if they wanted to apply for Medicaid. So we struggled. We went back. We went to try to find their parents who weren't even in the United States. We tried to find papers for them. And we're wondering, what happens if they don't have these papers? How would we get the genetic testing necessary for one of the boys who probably had a severe immune disorder? And for his cousin, who had recurrent headaches and vision problems, how would we get her ophthalmology appointment? You know, my colleagues and I, we walk back home each day and we're wondering to ourselves, we feel all these troubles and we're wondering, what's going to happen? What are we going to do about them? We remember the man who tried to end his life by jumping off the Ben Franklin Bridge and who survived and came to the emergency department. We remember the people up in the ICU who are the multitask people. Remember the 13, 14-year-old girls who are G4P0030s. We remember patients who don't really have a family, no visitors to the hospital, and the many hundreds more who never even end up seeing the hospital. And we wonder to ourselves, we may walk the streets of Camden from day to day, but what is it like to walk the streets of Camden all of your life? They're the people who keep us moving from floor to floor, who frustrate us from time to time, who cause us to cry, those that inspire us and yet cause us to remember what it's like to have the courage to take action and to have trust, and to trust another. And one of the patients on the psychiatric floor, I think, put it aptly. He wrote something that I'm going to read to you. He said, "You tell on yourself by the friends you seek, by the very manner in which you speak, by the way you employ your leisure time, by the way you use a dollar and a dime. You tell on yourself by the way that you walk, by the things of which you delight to talk, by simple things like what you wear, and by the spirit in which your burdens you bear." I want to thank you guys for this opportunity to present my poetry of life. Thank you.
Thank you.